All right, my friends, welcome back to the channel. I'm Brian, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about shipping personal belongings and personal household items to the Philippines and abroad. Let's first start and discuss the ins and outs with Balikbayan Boxes, which is a specific duty-free and tax-free shipment of personal belongings and household belongings that is very unique to the Philippines. Now, receiving a Balikbayan box, they are available to Filipino citizens and permanent residents of the Philippines. So if you're a foreigner, if you have a permanent visa status such as an SRV or a 13A, which is a spouse visa, this program is open to you. All right, so this is a global program allowing Filipinos across the world to ship items back to their home country, which was put in place way back in 1987 as a way to encourage overseas Filipino workers to support their economy back home in the Philippines. And just to put this into perspective, roughly about 10% of the total Filipino population actually lives and works overseas, which actually accounts for nearly 10% of the Philippines' gross domestic product, their GDP. Okay, actually about 10% of that comes from basically Filipinos working abroad and remitting money, sending that back to the Philippines. So that's how important overseas Filipinos workers are to the Philippines economy. So they've created this Balikbayan Box program to kind of support overseas Filipinos. All right, so this program has been well established for decades now, and it is an excellent resource if you qualify to use it. All right, so let's get into this program. Okay, to use this program, just look up Balikbayan Box in like a Google search map or something, and in most areas, whether you're in Canada, the US, or other foreign nations, anywhere there is going to be some sort of Filipino connection, so a Filipino grocery store, a market, a freight forwarder, shipper, they all typically support shipping Balikbayan boxes back to the Philippines. Okay, so that's going to be kind of sending things again from abroad back into the Philippines. Now you're going to have to purchase the box up front, and they will both sell the boxes to you as well as handle the shipping at these locations, right? Now these boxes typically come, they're in different sizes, but the most common, which is the large box, they're about 24 inches by 18 inches by 18 inches. So 24 by 18 by 18. That's a big box. All right, and they have no weight limit associated with what you're shipping because this is shipping as sea cargo. Okay, now it can take about 2 to 4 months of travel time to reach their destination in the Philippines. So this is something that's going to take a while to get here, right? But it is very cost effective. Okay, it's really a great way to ship personal belongings, again, if you qualify for this program. And like any cargo, okay, you have to follow all the shipping requirements and packing requirements, so you cannot ship prohibited items, anything firearms, anything like that, hazardous material, anything that includes large lithium batteries. You cannot ship those things, right? Because you have to declare everything that is in the box, right? That's something you must do. Now, how this typically works, again, like I said, is let's say you're a shipper and you're shipping something from Canada or the US that is an accredited freight forwarder that can accept these Balikbayan boxes. Once you have packaged them and properly sealed them, and you will use a heck of a lot of tape on these, okay? Remember, these are going to sit on a ship for many months, and they'll be in shipping yards as well in containers. So you want to package them properly. And these are thick boxes. They're really high quality. Okay, and yes, I have Filipino friends back in the US that I have helped pack before Balikbayan boxes, and we would go through almost like a half a roll of tape just on one box, right? So this is very normal. You really want to make sure that these boxes are sealed correctly, because again, they're going to be sitting in some environments like this. And again, do the paperwork. You're going to have a packing inventory sheet where you're going to declare every item that's in that box, right? And you're also going to have to make sure that you have the invoices and the boxes are clearly labeled on the box themselves. So big Sharpie, right, basically who's the recipient, a contact phone number, everything. That's key, making sure the boxes have all the documentation, right? And you can ask the freight forwarder or whoever you're working with who are actually selling you these boxes, what's all the steps you have to go through. Okay, so if you qualify, again, the Balikbayan boxes are an excellent way to send personal belongings to the Philippines. And typically the way it goes is this: is a large box, that 24 by 18 by 18. I've seen some that are 23 by like 18. what's that? They cost about $10 to $15 each box to purchase, right? And the shipping rate, typically, if you're shipping something, let's say from Canada to the US or something, is going to be about 125 US dollars per large box, right? And this again is very cost effective. So you're talking, you know, somewhere in the 125 to under 150 per box, no weight limit, right? And something that is that big. Now it can take several months, but it is highly cost efficient. So again, if this is a program that you're able to use, all right, I highly recommend it because it's a great way to get things here to the Philippines. All right, next, let's go ahead and discuss moving an entire household of belongings, okay? This is where you're gonna start to step into using a major moving service, right? So whether you're in the military and you're aligning with the moving office there, or if you're a civilian and you're shipping things through a major freight forwarder, that's something you're going to have to contact in your home country and get actual quotes for, right? Again, this is going to be all sea freight. Most of the time, anything you're shipping basically overseas is going to be sea freight, okay? That's either going to be known as two different sections here, which is going to be what's called an LCL, okay, or an FCL, okay? This is basically an LCL is a less than container load, and an FCL, which is a full container load. All right, so let's break these down. The less container load is basically a shared shipping container, okay? Shipping containers come either 20 foot or 40 foot, right? And you're basically hiring a professional moving company to load your personal household belongings basically in one of these shipping containers. And sometimes these containers, like especially if it's a 40 footer, they may have 2 or 3 households packed into one big container. Right? And this is very common if you've ever done moves around the United States or in Canada where you're actually moving state to state and you have a professional company that does this. They will actually have a very large, you know, semi truck, and it may be split out into maybe 2 households where, you know, you're in one half and another household is another, and then they, you know, drive to the next destination and unload there. So that's very common. That's what's going on here when you're actually doing a shared container. Right now, if you have a ton of stuff, right, again, to fit either in its own 20 foot or 40 foot container, and a lot of times this is if you're shipping vehicles, things like that, that's when you want to maybe consider looking at getting a major container, right, and doing basically you're buying the entire container by itself, or you're renting that for the shipping purposes. Again, work with a professional shipping company. You're going to have to get a detailed quote on this, and it's more than just, okay, what is it going to cost me to get it from point A to point B? Because there's going to have everything in there from the freight forwarding fees, you're going to have customs fees, transport fees to and from the docks to your final destination. So not only shipping basically to the port, what is it going to cost to basically for then a truck now to pick up that container and drive it to the location where basically you're going to unload. So if you're having a house built in the Philippines, something like that, what is that final destination cost as well? And a major freight forwarder and shipping company will work with you on all of those quotes. So that's something to keep in mind. But there is something very important that I want to point out here. And this is something that is you need to be made aware of, especially if you're moving items here into the Philippines. Okay, now per the Philippines customs rules, there is a specific import rule known as the new items rule. All right, this is the way the Philippines protects itself from having a lot of new items shipped into the country versus you buying them here locally. Okay, the Philippines has this rule. It's called Customs Administrative Order, the CDO. It's number 05-0, excuse me, it's number 05-2016. So 05-2026, and it was passed actually in 2026. Okay, and this says that property that is being shipped as personal belongings into the Philippines, and this is typically again associated with larger containers and stuff like that, household items, okay, must be used personal household effects, have been owned and possessed and used by the individual for at least the last 6 months prior to the shipment, right? So what they're trying to do is avoid you going into your home country and buying a ton of brand new stuff, so brand new couches and furniture and TVs and all these, basically outfitting out an entire container full of all these brand new items, right? And again, this is again like vehicles and stuff like that, so you want to be aware of this. They do have this rule where they just don't want to see a ton of brand new items, never, you know, like unopened boxes with price tags still on them. That's going to kind of throw up some red flags, and they may question, okay? So this, again, like I said, is more common for big ticket items. So just be aware of this, be concerned about this, basically, if you're basically going to be shipping an entire household goods. you want to make sure that you're following the rules and regulations they have set up to protect their own economy here as well. So that's what I want to point out to you on that case. All right, so another option beyond those two is air cargo. Now, air cargo, this is something that's usually reserved for very light items and they're critical items. Usually you're going to find this, typically this is going to be like an international package service, okay? So this could be more like a freight forwarder. There's a few of them out there. There's a couple that are, one is called My Shopping Box, another is Shipping Cart, another one is Johnny Air Cargo. These are freight forwarding services that basically give you a temporary address, let's say in the US or something, or in Canada or in the UK. And they're basically an international shipper, and what they allow you to do is ship items basically to the Philippines or really to many countries abroad, right, that you cannot otherwise get locally in the home countries, right, or in the country that you're currently in. So if you're in Thailand, if you're in Malaysia, if you're here in the Philippines, right, and you want specific items from the UK or Canada or the US that you cannot get locally here, you can use one of these air cargo services. And what they do is you ship basically, you buy things online, like at Walmart or something like that, locally in your home country. It sends basically to their warehouse. They package everything up. And they charge you usually like $6, $7, $8 a pound, and then they will ship that over to whatever country you're in. So again, it's more expensive, but if you're looking for very critical items and you wanted to get these items pretty quick, you're not going to wait a couple months. This may take 7, 10, 15 days. From the time they actually package everything up, receive all the goods that you've ordered online, and then send it over. This is what people used to do when Amazon was not selling items in various countries, is they would use this option. Now that Amazon is selling more things and even some limited stuff, and you have to kind of go over a certain amount to qualify for free shipping. I think I've had a few things now shipped here to the Philippines. What's that? On Amazon, and I think once you spend about $49, right, some items qualify for free shipping, and then they just bundle up and ship it over. So that's another option as well. But there's many services to get air cargo over here, especially if it's something small, it's lightweight, and that's what it comes down to, is if it basically, weight is going to be the key there, because it's going to be air cargo, and that's going to be an issue. All right, so another thing I want you to make aware of, and this includes items that are coming air freight, all right, and that is the Philippines has this rule, right, which is this minimum value rule. What this basically says is that any imported goods that are valued less than 10,000 pesos, 10,000 Filipino pesos, are exempt from duties and taxes. So this is around $200 US, 190, $200 US. So if you're under that, right, basically, you don't pay any duties and taxes on the item. However, once you go over that 10,000 per item, and it's per item, so if you're buying an external monitor or something and it's under that $200, you're going to be fine. Usually you can get that, shipped over and stuff, and then duties and taxes and stuff like that are not going to be assessed at. But then let's say you're buying an expensive monitor that's, $350 something. Well, now all of a sudden you're going to have duties and taxes placed on an item because it falls within this rule. So that's another item here specifically in the Philippines you want to be aware of, and also look into this country specific. So if you're in Malaysia, if you're in basically, Japan or another country, you want to make sure you're aware of what basically the import taxes are, duties and taxes are on items that you're having shipped in, and you don't get caught in a place where all of a sudden something shows up in customs and they're contacting you to say, hey, you got to pay basically duty on this before we release it. You don't want to get into this scenario. Be aware of this before you go in, all right? Okay, another thing I like to talk about here is excess baggage. This is another shipping option you have to getting things overseas, right? And that's basically really simple. It's checking extra bags on the airplane with you. Now, this is something you have to go with. You can't just basically go to an airport and drop off a piece of luggage and say, I'm shipping this on the airplane. No, this is something that you are on that airplane. It's basically, in the cargo hold and stuff. and you're just getting extra baggage. Now, I specifically did this when I moved here to the Philippines, right? I flew business class, and that gave me both extra bags, and they also gave me extra weight on those bags, right? So that was something I specifically looked into, and I wound up actually checking 3 bags, checked bags. I had 3 bags, and then I had my carry-on on top of that, and I did that specifically knowing that I was going to be bringing a lot of items here. And that was, you know, again, because my intention was to set up home base here. So I downsized a lot of things, and then I wound up basically checking 3 bags on my flight over. And that's something you can look at. A lot of people tend to do that these days. And they may even, you know, live part-time in another country, and then as they slowly spend more time there and they fly back and forth to their home country, they will occasionally bring extra luggage and kind of like ferry things over on each one of those trips. Okay. Final tip here. All right, number 1, air tags. I use air tags often when I am traveling, and I will put these air tag trackers, right, and I'll drop them in my checked bags, right, and at the very least I'll have them in either all of the bags or sometimes just 1 or 2 of them. But this way I know where those bags are at any time. So if anything gets lost, it could be, hey, wait a minute, my bag's not, you know, on the aircraft, or it's stuck at this terminal. Especially if you're changing planes and stuff internationally, I like to throw air tags in all my bags. That way it's very easy for me to track them. And if you don't have Apple products, there are other options. I know Samsung and everything else, they have tiles and stuff. You can throw those in your bags and track things. All right, number 2. And that is downsizing is key. If you're planning to start living abroad as an expat, you want to start thinking about what you can live without, right? Now, many people, they think, oh, you know, there's no way I can get rid of all this stuff, and that's fine, right? We all start somewhere, okay? So my recommendation is go ahead, get a storage unit in your home country and start moving things into that storage unit. Yes, it's going to cost you a little bit more, but what this is going to do is allow you over time to figure out what you really can live without. You know, can I give this to a family member? Can I sell this? Can I donate this? All right, over time, you're going to realize how much you're really not using. And it's going to get to a point, especially if it's furniture and things like that, you're really going to get to a kind of a moment where you're like, you know, I haven't used this in a year or 2. Maybe I can just get rid of this. All right. And number 3, this is the big one, is plan and start this process early. You do not want to wait and stress out at the last minute knowing that your flight is only a couple days away or a week away. And you're like, oh my God, you know, what do I do, right? You want this stuff completely planned out. In fact, I had many of my bags and everything packed weeks before. I test packed everything. I packed everything up. Is this going to fit? What do I want in each bag? I know that sounds a little bit nerdy and stuff, but I wanted to make sure I was not stressed at the last minute. And I did. I wound up going in those bags, moving things around. So if you have the option, start packing early and then figuring out what you use and what you're not going to use. And you know, trust me, you're going to go through a time where you're going to repack those bags many times. But knowing what is where and kind of optimizing it can be a big help and remove the stress, especially when you're coming up on your flight and you're going to be heading overseas. All right, my friends, there you have it. There's some tips and strategies basically on shipping items abroad. So, and there's a few options for you have available. All right, so let me know about this. Let's chat about this in the comments section. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care, my friends. Cheers.